My daughter received a bike from her uncle, my brother, on her 11th birthday. She was over the moon and excited to use it because it was on her wish list for so long. Days ago, I discovered that my husband reached out to my brother to ask for the recipient for the bike and returned it to the store, and kept the money for himself while my daughter was at school. The bike was at home. My daughter and I got home and she started crying after noticing the bike was gone. My husband was home at the time. He told me he returned the bike and got money in return to spend on something useful for us since the bike was just there as a distraction and there was no need for it now since we're the dead of winter. I was aggravated and lost it on him, saying it wasn't his, didn't come from him. And he didn't pay for it, so he had no right to touch it, knowing our daughter's been wanting it for a long time, and my brother was decent enough to buy it for her despite barely having money to get him by. I told him what he did was theft and insisted he hand over the money to me so I could repurchase it, but he said he spent it on stuff for the house and doesn't have any money left now. But I knew about the money he was stashing away in the bedroom that he forbade me from tossing, and I took some of it and went out to repurchase the bike while he was out the next day. He found out and verbally lashed out at me, saying I should have never touched the money he was saving for himself, which isn't much, but I lashed right back that I had to so I could repurchase the bike he took from under our daughter. He explained that he didn't keep the money for himself and instead spent it for necessities for our home, but he was at fault for taking the bike in the first place and he was responsible for getting it back. He yelled at me for almost 10 minutes, then stormed outside and started smoking. My daughter asked why her dad was upset and that she no longer wants the bike if dad doesn't want her to have it. But I assured her that's not the case and told her she shouldn't feel guilty and to just focus on enjoying her bike. My husband hasn't stopped grilling me about how I disrespected and undermined him, and managed to make our daughter hate him after making him look like the bad guy. I again said he shouldn't have touched the bike. End of the story. He's called me thief and juvenile for taking money from his savings and being sneaky about it. 2 years ago, my house burnt to the ground after being struck by lightning. Thankfully, it was during the day, so our 3 kids were at school and my husband and I were at work. We lost everything, but we were safe. It took almost 11 months for the insurance to pay out. The insurance covered 1 month worth of hotel stays, but after that we were made to fend for ourselves, and the only option we had was to move in with my SIL. She tells us we can have her spare room and her office space. Since she used neither of the rooms, and her stipulations was we needed to purchase all of our own food and pay her $100 a week. By week 3 all of that changed. She then decides we need to pay her $250 a week and we can only use 1 room. So all 5 of us were crammed into the smallest room she had, which was the size of a glorified closet space and didn't even fit a twin bed and a small dresser. So we lived out of trash bags and slept on the floor for close to $1,000 a month some months, and still had to purchase all of our own food, despite her claiming my children on her food stamps. She also had no bills outside of her land tax, $450 a year, electric and heating oil, which she hardly ever filled. So we were essentially paying her so she could do leisure activities. It was the worst 8 months of my life. 3 months ago, my grandmother decided that she wanted to go to assisted living after a fall and transferred the deed of her house to me, and basically said it was mine now. It is a 5-bedroom farmhouse. My boys insist on sharing a room, so we have 2 extra bedrooms. Well, my sister-in-law lost her house last month due to not paying her land tax for several years and asked if her and her stepdaughter could stay with us until they get enough money to move down south. I said sure, 1 bedroom, $800 a month, and you have to buy and cook all your food separately because my daughter is vegan. She looked at me like I had 10 heads and said that she and her stepdaughter should not be made to share a room when there are 2 extra rooms, and stated she cannot afford a rent of $800 while purchasing all of her own food on top of it. I said, neither could we, but we managed to cram 5 people into a glorified closet space while you were getting $1,000 and food stamps. Take it or leave it. She decided to leave. I have a sister who has a husband who is the poster child of weaponized incompetence. They have 4 kids and she's pregnant. My sister works a full-time job, 40+ hours a week, cleans her entire house, cooks, takes care of all her children without him doing anything. It is seriously mind-blowing that she wakes up at like 4 a.m., cooks breakfast, does chores, gets all of her kids ready for school, takes them all to school and daycare, and all he does is stay home and work. And when his kids get home, after my sister picks them up, of course, he will play with them for a little and play video games until he falls asleep. She actually makes more than him. My fiancé and I had to stay with them for 6 weeks while our home was being renovated, and since we both WFH, we helped her, and it is amazing how much happier she is when she has help. I helped with the kids, and my fiancé even drove her to doctor's appointments. Her husband literally only acknowledges he is a parent when his family is around, then he is a God-fearing, hard-working father of 5. He is the one that wanted more kids. She wanted to stop after her last baby, but he needed more boys. I am seriously concerned not only for her, but her kids as well, because now her oldest is seeing what's happening and trying to help, but my sister is prideful and refuses to let her child do anything. Me and this man have never gotten along. He's been acting like this since their 8-year-old was born. I've tried talking to her about leaving, but she doesn't want her kids to grow up in a broken home. And unfortunately, her experience with our parents' divorce was completely different than mine, so she doesn't understand that a divorce would benefit her kids here because she thinks they need their mom and dad together. Cut to this past weekend, her and her husband threw a pre-Thanksgiving potluck where our entire family plus his was there. I stayed with my sister a few days before because I knew he wouldn't help. So we're at dinner all talking, and I mention we are trying for a baby, and my brother-in-law makes an offhanded comment to him about how hard fatherhood is. And I snapped and said, like you would know. He looked taken aback and asked me what I meant, and I unloaded on him, calling him a pathetic excuse for a man who makes my 8 months pregnant sister do everything for their family. I went off for a solid 10 minutes, and he sat there shrinking in his seat. I left. Last night my sister called me and thanked me for standing up for her and told me she appreciated me. Although today I got a very nasty text from him telling me I'm a terrible person, and because I lied in front of his family, his mom is angry at him and is moving in with them to help her out, and I've made him the laughingstock of his family. He certainly thinks so. Ex and I had way too young. We're friendly co-parents. One big rule we share is if our daughter breaks something, she pays for it. Now, sis and I are the only grandkids. Aunt never married. Instead, she worked with GMA and GPA at their Seams Tri-store and took it over when they retired. Sis's girlfriend proposed last year. GPA offered to make FSIL a custom suit, which she was over the moon about. GMA had me ask Sis what her dream dress was and record the convo. Sis, thinking it was just between us, told me in great detail what her dream dress was, though said it was way too expensive. So she would get something much cheaper. Well, a few months later GMA surprised Sis with her dream wedding dress. It FOT perfectly and everyone cried. Sadly, GMA recently passed away, which hit us all hard. Sis was devastated, but decided that the dress meant GMA would still be there with us at the wedding. The issue comes in with C. She's very large, much larger than Sis. 3 days ago, we decided to go visit Sis and see how she was doing. It was great, but then C asked if she could try on the dress. Sis politely said no. C made a face, but dropped it. Later, we decided to go grab dinner. Sis and I went to pick up our orders, but C decided to stay and play with Sis's dog. We got back, and the dress was destroyed. C had apparently tried to get it on, popping some seams, and got stuck. Instead of waiting for help, she cut her way out. The dress was hacked to bits. Sis was devastated and asked us to leave. I grounded C and called Aunt with some pictures, asking if it could be saved. She said there was no. She said she'd make a new one, but it wasn't the same. Then she dropped the bomb on me. GMA had hand-sewed most of the dress, used super expensive fabric, and put almost 500 hours in making that dress, since it was the only family wedding we'd have. In total, the dress cost $12,000, give or take. C has about $15,000 saved from various jobs, as well as winning writing competitions. This was supposed to help her in college. I took her to the bank and set in motion transferring all the funds, since as her parent I still have control over it. $12,000 to Aunt to pay for the new dress. $3,000 to my sister's wedding as an emotional distress tax. I explained exactly why this was happening to C, but she sobbed the entire time, asking what was she supposed to do for college and saying it wasn't her fault. I told her she could get a job if she didn't get a scholarship, and it was her fault for trying on the dress after she'd been told no, and for not waiting until we got back. A few popped seams could have been fixed. Hacking the dress to pieces couldn't. C told my ex, and while she agreed C was in the wrong after the full story, said I shouldn't have ruined her future for a free dress. I reminded her of our rule, and she still thinks I'm wrong. $3,000, that was to make up to my sister that C destroyed the last gift our dead grandma ever gave her. I consider that part of the price of destroying the dress, since even if it remakes it, it's lost a great deal of its sentiment value. I pointed out how young we has her because I wanted to explain how a 31-year-old has a 16-year-old kid. I do not resent having her. She's the best thing I've ever done. I also brought up C's size because Sis has Crohn's disease and thus is very tiny. The dress was made her for size, and C is much larger than Sis. I love C as she is, but just holding the dress up, it was clear it wouldn't fit. The money was C's have fun at college money, not her college fund. My ex and I are paying for whatever scholarships don't. When she was asking what she would do for college, she was asking what did she do for fun and to buy things we didn't pay for. I got off the phone with my ex. I sent her the pictures, and she freaked. She apparently didn't believe me when I said it had been hacked apart, and believed it was just a few torn seams. She was pretty much on my side after. She told me that she spent the day badgering our daughter, asking her why she did what she did. And finally she cracked and said she was mad that grandma wasn't alive to make her a dress, and that it was unfair. My sister got a free beautiful dress as a reminder when my daughter got nothing, despite the many things she was given after the funeral. She tried it on, took it off when the seams popped, and then in anger hacked it apart. If she couldn't have a dress from grandma, no one could. Her own words. Honestly, knowing she did it on purpose has just made things worse. The fact that she could be so